That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun crested the horizon over Coronado Naval Base, casting long shadows across the wet sand of the training grounds. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Hale stood at attention with his team, the salt air sharp in his lungs, mingling with the faint scent of diesel from the idling Zodiac boats nearby. His boots sank slightly into the damp earth, the weight of his gear a familiar anchor. At his side, Rex, his Belgian Malinois partner, sat rigid, ears perked, black eyes scanning the line of operators ahead. The dog's harness gleamed under the early light, tags jingling softly with each controlled breath. Platoon, attention! The command echoed from Lieutenant Commander Ellis, his voice cutting through the low hum of waves lapping the shore. The SEALs snapped to, spines straight, chins level. Hale felt the subtle shift in Rex's stance, the dog's loyalty mirroring his own, a silent pact forged in countless drills and deployments. Hale had been with Rex for 4 years, since the pup's first certification at the Naval Special Warfare K-9 unit. They moved as one. Hale's hand signals precise, Rex's responses instinctive. In the chaos of ops, that bond was unbreakable, a thread of trust amid the fog of war. The morning's exercise was standard. Simulated beach insertion, followed by perimeter search. No live fire, just the rhythm of orders and execution. Ellis paced the line, his boots thudding on the concrete pad adjacent to the sand. Hale, your team's on point for the sweep. Rex leads the detect. Keep it tight. Any deviation, and we reset. Hale nodded once, his response a crisp, "Aye, sir." He didn't need reminders. Discipline was etched into him like the trident pin on his uniform. At 32, Hale was a veteran of 3 tours, his record clean, his focus laser-sharp. Hospitals were for the broken, he always said, places of sterile defeat. He'd patched himself up in the field more times than he could count, avoiding medbays like they were enemy territory. Rex was his medic. In a way, the dog's nose had sniffed out more threats than any IV drip. The team moved out, boots pounding in unison as they hit the surf zone. Cold water splashed up to their knees, the Pacific's chill biting through neoprene. Hale signaled Rex forward, the dog plunging into the foam without hesitation, tail low and steady. Radio chatter crackled in Hale's earpiece. "Alpha team, clear ingress. Bravo, hold for signal." The air filled with the slap of waves and the distant thump of a helo warming up on the pad. Everything felt ordered, predictable, the chain of command a steel spine holding them upright. Halfway through the perimeter, Rex stiffened. His hackles rose, a low rumble building in his throat. Hale dropped to a knee, gloved hand on the dog's collar. "Easy, boy." The team fanned out, weapons low but ready. Rex pulled toward a cluster of mock debris, old crates and buoys, simulating urban clutter. Hale followed, heart rate steady, trusting the animal's instincts over his own eyes. That's when the first anomaly hit. Rex alerted on a buried device, but the handler from the support unit, a young petty officer named Torres, waved it off. "False positive." "Hale," Torres called, his voice too casual over the comms. He was new to K-9 rotations, assigned to verify alerts during training. "Log it and move on. LT doesn't want delays." Hale paused, scanning the area. Rex didn't false alert, not once in their partnership. The dog's nose was calibrated for explosives, narcotics, even human remains. It didn't err on command. But Torres stepped closer, clipboard in hand, and nudged the crate with his boot. "Come on, it's clear. You're holding up the line." Hale's jaw tightened. The order was implicit. Comply, keep the drill flowing. Ellis's voice cut in. "Hale, confirm and advance." Routine demanded obedience. Questioning a support call could flag insubordination. Yet Rex pawed the ground insistently, whining, a rare break in his composure. Hale's mind raced through protocols. K9 handlers had final say on alerts, but in training, chain trumped instinct. He glanced at his teammate, Petty Officer Reyes, who shrugged subtly, eyes on the horizon. "Negative, Torres," Hale said finally, voice level but firm. "Rex is locked on. We dig." The words hung in the salt-heavy air, a quiet defiance amid the crash of waves. Torres bristled, radioing back to command. Hale's overriding. Request backup. The team waited, the morning's discipline fracturing like thin ice. Rex pressed against Hale's leg, warm fur brushing his fatigues, a reminder of the trust that had saved them both in Fallujah, when the dog's alert pulled Hale from an unseen IED. Ellis arrived minutes later, helicopter blades whirring overhead as he strode across the sand. His face was stone, the sun glinting off his cover. "Report," he demanded, eyes flicking from Hale to Rex. Hale stood, saluting crisply. "Sir, Rex has a solid hit, not clearing without verification." The lieutenant commander knelt briefly, peering at the crate. The support team excavated under watchful eyes, and there it was, a training simulant overlooked in setup. Not lethal, but proof. Rex was right. Tension rippled through the platoon, whispers carried on the wind. Hale had bucked the chain for a dog. Ellis's gaze lingered on Hale, assessing. "Debrief at 1400. Full review." As the team reformed, Hale scratched Rex's ear, the dog's tail thumping once against the wet sand. Loyalty wasn't just to orders. It was to the truth beneath them. But Hale knew the reckoning was coming. Reviews could escalate. Careers hinge on such moments. He avoided hospitals for their finality, but this was a wound to the system itself, one that demanded facing the sterile lights of inquiry. By midday, the base buzzed with subdued chatter. Hale led Rex back to the kennels, the dog's paws clicking on concrete, the scent of kibble and leather filling the air. He hosed down the gear, movements methodical, but his thoughts churned. Defiance in training was one thing. The institutional gears would grind slower, testing where duty ended and conscience began. Little did he know, this alert was just the first thread unraveling a larger knot, one that would pull him into the uncharted territory of vulnerability, far from the beaches he knew. The debrief room in the SEAL Team 3 headquarters smelled of stale coffee and polished oak, the kind of scent that clung to uniforms after long hours under fluorescent lights. Petty Officer Marcus Hale sat at the long table. Rex curled at his feet under the chair, the dog's head resting on his boot. The Belgian Malinois' breathing was even, a soft counterpoint to the tension humming in the air like distant rotor wash. Hale's hands rested flat on the table, fingers aligned precisely, as if the posture could steady the undercurrent of scrutiny. Lieutenant Commander Ellis entered first, his steps measured on the linoleum, followed by the training coordinator, Master Chief Harlan, and a cluster of support staff, including Torres. The door clicked shut, sealing the room in quiet formality. Ellis took the head of the table, his cover tucked under his arm, eyes sweeping the group before landing on Hale. "Petty Officer Hale, walk us through the incident, from the alert." Hale nodded once, voice steady as he recounted the sweep. The surf zone entry, Rex's stiffen, the pawing at the crate. He described Torres's dismissal without inflection, sticking to facts, the radio exchange, the override, the verification. Rex shifted slightly at the mention of his name, ears flicking up, but Hale's hand dropped briefly to the dog's neck, a subtle reassurance. The room listened in silence, the only sound the scratch of pens on notepads and the faint tick of a wall clock. Torres interjected midway, his tone clipped but professional. "Sir, it was a judgment call. The simulant wasn't calibrated for that sector. Standard procedure is to log and proceed to maintain tempo." Harlan leaned forward, his weathered face impassive, but Hale caught the subtle narrowing of the master's eyes. Procedure was the backbone here, but so was the K9 bond. drilled into every handler from day one at Lackland. Ellis steepled his fingers, the gold on his wedding band catching the light. "Hale, you overrode a support directive. Explain the rationale." Hale met the commander's gaze, chin level. "Sir, Rex's track record is 98% in controlled environments. He's saved lives on ops. Instinct overrode the log. Digging took 2 minutes. Resetting the whole perimeter would have cost more." He didn't mention the whine in Rex's throat, the rare vulnerability that tugged at his own resolve. Emotion stayed leashed. This was about chain integrity. The discussion stretched, voices layering like briefing overlays, protocol citations from the K9 manual, timestamps from the comm logs, even a playback of the radio chatter, static-laced words echoing in the room. Harlan nodded at Hale's points, but Torres pushed back, citing delays in prior drills. "One dog's nose can't dictate the op, sir. We train for human verification." Rex lifted his head then, a low huff escaping, as if sensing the slight. Hale's boot nudged him gently back down, the leather of his sole warm from the contact. By the end, Ellis's verdict landed like a dropped magazine, cautionary note in Hale's file, mandatory cross-training with support units, and a full K9 research for Rex starting next week. "Discipline holds us together, Hale. Loyalty to the team means trusting the chain, not testing it." The words carried weight. A ripple Hale felt in his gut, the kind that could stall promotions, mark him as the operator who prioritized a dog over orders. As the group filed out, Harlan lingered, clapping Hale's shoulder. "Solid call, son. But watch your flanks. The system's got its own nose for defiance." Hale led Rex out into the late afternoon haze, the base's asphalt radiating heat through his soles. The kennels were a short walk, past the grinder where recruits double-timed under instructors barked commands, the air thick with sweat and sea salt. He filled Rex's bowl with fresh water, watching the dog lap it down, tongue curling efficiently. "Good boy," Hale murmured, scrubbing behind the ears, feeling the rough texture of fur against his calloused palm. 4 years, and Rex had never let him down. Not in the dust of Helmand, not in the tight alleys of Reka. Hospitals were for the weak, Hale reminded himself, rinsing his hands under the spigot. He'd stitched his own wounds with fishing line once, Rex standing guard. Medbays meant surrender, exposure under those harsh lights, but the reset loomed. A grind of obstacle courses and scent trials under the California sun. Hale prepped the gear that evening in the team bay, oiling Rex's harness, checking the leather straps for wear. The space was sparse, bunks lined with duffels, walls pinned with deployment photos. Hale and Rex in the sandbox, the dog's alert pose frozen mid-mission. Reyes wandered in, tossing a protein bar Hale's way. "Heard about the slap on the wrist. Torres is pissed, says you're making him look bad." Hale caught the bar, peeling it open. "Not my intent, just the job." Reyes leaned against a locker, arms crossed. "Job's changing, brother. With the new oversight from JAG, every call's a report." He glanced at Rex, who was gnawing a chew toy with focused intensity. "That dog's your edge. Don't let them dull it." The conversation drifted to weekend liberty, but Hale's mind stayed on the file note, a quiet scar in his otherwise spotless record. He avoided the base clinic even for checkups, preferring the team's corpsman for anything minor. Vulnerability wasn't in his playbook. The next dawn broke with the research's first phase, a mock urban search in the compound's mock village. Plywood facades baking under the rising sun. Hale and Rex moved through the shadows of simulated buildings, the dog's nose working the air currents, dusty concrete, faint gun oil, the metallic tang of hidden simulants. Other handlers paired with their partners, German shepherds and labs, weaving tight patterns, commands whispered in clipped tones. Ellis observed from the observation deck, binoculars steady, while Torres logged times from a tablet. Everything flowed until the third structure. Rex alerted hard on a corner unit, body rigid, bark sharp and insistent. Hale signaled clear, but the verified team, Torres again, cleared it fast. Negative hit, Hale, move on. Doubt flickered. Rex didn't bark without cause. Hale hesitated, then advanced, but as he rounded the corner, his boot caught an unsecured grate. Sabotage from last night's reset overlooked in the rush. He twisted, ankle buckling under his weight, pain lancing up his leg like a hot wire. He hit the ground hard, gravel biting through fatigues, Rex immediately at his side, whining low, nose pressing against Hale's arm. The team converged, Reyes calling for Corman over comms. Man down, ankle, possible sprain. Hale waved them off, gritting through the throb, but Ellis's voice crackled. Evac to medical, no arguments. For the first time in years, Hale felt the pull toward the hospital, the sterile pull he'd dodged like incoming fire. Rex stayed glued to him as they loaded him onto the cart, the dog's warmth an anchor against the rising tide of exposure. The base clinic was close, but protocol demanded full eval. Whispers already circulated about the defiant handler's bad luck. Wheeled into the med bay, the air shifted, antiseptic sharp, monitors beeping softly in the white-walled room. A nurse, mid-30s with a no-nonsense bun and steady hands, checked his vitals. Petty Officer Hale, lie still, X-rays next. Her name tag read, Lieutenant Sarah Klein. Rex was barred at the door, kennelled temporarily, his anxious whines echoing down the hall. Hale stared at the ceiling tiles, the pain secondary to the vulnerability settling in. This place stripped you bare, layer by layer. Little did he know, in the quiet hours ahead, Klein would hand him something that cracked his resolve wider than any injury. A simple drawing from a child's hand, lines of crayon capturing Rex's form, pulling threads from a past Hale had buried deep. The fluorescent lights of the base clinic hummed overhead, casting a clinical pallor over the exam room's white walls. Petty Officer Marcus Hale lay on the stiff gurney, his right ankle elevated on a foam wedge, the initial swelling already turning the skin a mottled purple beneath the ace wrap. The pain throbbed in rhythm with his pulse, a dull, insistent drum. But he kept his face neutral, jaw set as Lieutenant Sarah Klein adjusted the IV line, snaking into his arm. Saline dripped steadily, the soft plink echoing in the quiet space. Outside, the muffled whines of Rex filtered through the door, a handler from the kennel unit leading the dog away for holding. Hale's fingers twitched at his side, the absence of the dog's steady presence like a missing limb. Klein moved with efficient grace, her scrubs whispering against the linoleum as she logged his vitals into the tablet. Sprain's moderate, Petty Officer. X-ray confirms no fracture, but you'll be on crutches for 2 weeks. PT starts tomorrow. Her voice was calm, professional, no pity, just the facts delivered like a briefing. Hale nodded once, eyes fixed on the ceiling grid, counting the perforations to steady himself. Hospitals were traps, he thought, places where the chain of command blurred into white coats and clipboards. He'd evaded them on deployments, taping ribs and ignoring fevers, Rex's watchful eyes his only witness. Now here he was, exposed under the glare. She paused at the foot of the gurney, glancing at his chart. You're not a frequent flyer here. Last entries from 18, field dressing on a shoulder. Hale's gaze flicked to her, brief and assessing. Corman handled it, ma'am. No need for this. Klein's expression didn't shift, but she set the tablet down, pulling up a stool. The room smelled of iodine and fresh linens, the air conditioner whispering cool drafts across his exposed arm. Protocol's protocol, Hale. Even SEALs don't get exemptions. There was a trace of dry humor in her tone, born from years triaging operators who treated medbays like enemy lines. As she prepped the pain meds, the door swung open with a hydraulic sigh. Master Chief Harlan stepped in, his cover under one arm, face etched with the day's grit, sand from the mock village still dusting his boots. "Status?" he asked Klein, then nodded to Hale. The nurse summarized crisply, "No breaks, rest and rehab." Harlan grunted approval, then turned to Hale, voice low. "Research's on hold till you're cleared. Ellis wants a full report on the grate. Looks like maintenance skimped on the reset. Torres is logging it as equipment failure, not sabotage." Hale shifted slightly, the gurney creaking under him. "Rex barked true again, Chief. If I'd pushed—" Harlan raised a hand, cutting him off. "You did right overriding last time. This? Bad luck. But eyes are on you now, Jags sniffing around after the debrief note." The words landed heavy, a reminder of the ripples from the morning's defiance. Hale's file, once a straight line of commendations, now bore that cautionary mark. Operator who questioned the chain for a dog's instinct. Promotions could stall, rotations reassigned. Harlan clapped his good shoulder lightly, the gesture formal. "Rest up. I'll check on Rex, boys pacing the kennel like he's the one hurt." As the Master Chief exited, the door clicked shut, leaving the room in antiseptic silence once more. Klein returned to her notes, but Hale caught her glancing at the door, as if weighing something. She hesitated, then reached into her pocket, pulling out a folded sheet of paper, construction stock, edges worn from handling. "This isn't procedure," she said quietly, unfolding it, "but it might help pass the time." She placed it on the tray table beside him. Hale eyed it warily, the paper's creases soft under the light. It was a child's drawing, crayon lines in bold blues and browns depicting a soldier and his dog, the pair standing tall against a scribbled desert backdrop. The dog was unmistakable, pointed ears, alert posture, a harness sketched with wobbly precision. The soldier held a leash, face a simple oval, but the bond was there in the shared stance. He stared, the colors vivid against the sterile white. "What's this?" Klein sat back, her hands folding in her lap. "From the pediatric ward. Kid named Jamal, 8 years old. His dad's a Marine deployed last year. Heard about Rex from a news clip. Some op in Syria where your team pulled civilians. Jamal's been drawing K9 heroes ever since. Therapy tool, keeps him grounded." Hale's throat tightened, unbidden. He'd buried those memories. The dust-choked village, Rex alerting on a hidden cache that saved a family huddled in a mud hut. No medals for that, just the quiet nod from command. Hospitals meant facing the human cost, the vulnerabilities, ops left behind. The drawing pulled at threads he'd secured tight, nights in the field, where Rex's nose meant life for strangers, the dog's loyalty a mirror to his own unspoken doubts. Duty was clear. Follow orders, execute the mission. But compassion, that was the gray zone, the whine in Rex's throat during the alert, the child's crayon lines capturing what reports never could. "Didn't know," Hale murmured, tracing the edge of the paper with his thumb. Klein nodded. "Most don't. You operators keep it locked down. But it matters. The legacy, beyond the op." Her words hung, a subtle challenge to his avoidance, the medbay's lights reflecting off the drawing's waxy surface. Outside, the base stirred with evening routines, distant calls of "fall in" from the grinder, the low rumble of generators kicking on. Hale folded the drawing carefully, tucking it into his pocket, the paper crinkling against his fatigues. Rex's whines had faded, but the bond echoed stronger now, intertwined with this unexpected vulnerability. The reset delay was minor. The real test loomed in the institutional gaze, where one handler's conscience could force a review of protocols long unchallenged. As Klein wheeled in the crutches, Hale gripped the bedrail, resolve hardening. Hospitals weren't defeat. They were the front line of truth. The evening shift change brought a hush to the clinic, nurses' footsteps padding softly in the halls. Hale maneuvered on the crutches, the aluminum cold under his palms, testing his weight in the recovery bay. Harlan had cleared Rex for a brief visit, the dog led in on a short leash by a kennel tech. Rex bounded forward as far as the tether allowed, nose questing the air until he reached Hale's side, warm muzzle pressing into his hand. The fur was damp from a post-training rinse, carrying the faint earthiness of the grounds. "Hey, partner," Hale said, voice low, scratching the ruff. Rex leaned in, tail sweeping the floor in measured arcs, his eyes locking on Hale's with that unwavering trust. Klein observed from the doorway, tablet in hand, but said nothing. The moment stretched, soldier and dog in silent communion amid the beeps of monitors. This was the core, loyalty unyielding, a counter to the rigid orders that sometimes blinded them all. As the tech led Rex away again, Hale felt the drawing's weight in his pocket, a child's vision of their world, innocent and profound. It stirred something deeper than pain, a moral pull toward reckoning not just for himself, but for the system that bound them. Word of the injury spread through the team like radio static, Reyes dropping by with a duffel of Hale's gear. Ellis is pulling strings for a quick review on training setups. Your call on the alert? It's got traction. Hale nodded, settling back, the crutches propped nearby. The defiance from the beach had evolved. No longer just a handler's instinct, but a catalyst, questioning oversights, prioritizing bonds over blind tempo, yet the cost lingered. Exposure here, in this place of enforced stillness, where conscience demanded he face more than sprains. As night fell, the clinic's lights dimmed, the hum of the vents a steady lull. Hale stared at the drawing under the bedside lamp, the crayon strokes blurring slightly in the glow. Jamal's hero, a SEAL, and his dog standing firm. It was a legacy in miniature, one that rippled beyond deployments, testing the line between duty and the human heart within it. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The base clinic's recovery ward settled into the quiet rhythm of night. The overhead lights dimmed to a soft amber glow that pooled on the linoleum floors. Petty Officer Marcus Hale shifted on the narrow bed, the crutches leaning against the rail like silent sentinels. His ankle throbbed beneath the wrap, a persistent ache that mirrored the unrest in his chest. The child's drawing lay unfolded on the bedside table, its crayon edges curling slightly in the dry air from the vents. Jamal's lines, simple, earnest, depicted Rex in mid-alert, ears pricked, body taut against an invisible threat, with Hale's figure a steadfast shadow beside him. The desert backdrop was a swirl of ochre and tan, evoking the heat-shimmered horizons of past ops, but softened by a child's hand. Hale traced the paper's texture with his fingertip, the wax resistant under his callus. He'd seen the aftermath of missions in official reports, cleared sectors, secured perimeters. But this, a kid in a pediatric ward, miles from the sand, imagining their world as one of quiet heroes. It cracked the armor he'd built, layer upon layer of discipline to keep vulnerability at bay. Hospitals forced confrontation. The sterile confines stripped away the field's distractions, leaving only the echo of choices. Rex's whines from earlier lingered in his mind, the dog's loyalty a tether pulling him back to the kennels, where routines waited unbroken. A soft knock interrupted the stillness. Lieutenant Sarah Klein entered, her footsteps measured, carrying a clipboard and a thermos of what smelled like chamomile tea, faintly herbal, cutting through the antiseptic haze. She was off shift, but in civvies now, a plain sweater over slacks, hair loose from its bun, revealing faint lines of fatigue around her eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, setting the thermos down and pulling up the visitor's chair. Her voice was low, not probing, just present, like a corpsman checking a pulse without fanfare. Hale shook his head, folding the drawing but not hiding it. "Ankle's fine, just processing." He gestured vaguely toward the paper, the movement pulling at his IV line. Klein nodded, pouring tea into a disposable cup, the steam rising in lazy curls. She handed it to him, the warmth seeping through the thin material. "Jamal's dad is due back in 3 months. The drawings help him mark time. Yours and Rex's story came up in a family support brief, K9 units pulling families out of harm's way. She paused, eyes on the sketch. It's not classified, but it's real. Impacts ripple. The words settled like dew on his thoughts. Hale sipped the tea, its mild bitterness grounding him. Duty was execution. Follow the op plan, trust the chain. But morality? That was Rex pawing at a crate, ignoring a dismissal. It was a child's crayon immortalizing a bond that saved lives without fanfare. We don't think about the after, Hale said finally, voice even. Mission ends. We debrief and reset. Hospitals make you dwell. Klein leaned back, her chair creaking softly. That's the job's cost. You operators carry it silent, until something forces the lid off. Outside, the base hummed faintly, a distant hum of generators, the occasional boot scrape from a patrol-shifting watch. Hale's mind replayed the recert, the grates give under his foot, Rex's bark echoing off plywood walls. Torres's quick clear had nearly cost more than tempo. Now, with the injury, questions circled like spotters on Overwatch. Harlan's visit earlier hinted at it. JAG involvement, a formal inquiry into training protocols. Hale's defiance on the beach wasn't isolated. It spotlighted flaws, support overrides clashing with handler instincts, maintenance lapses in mock setups. One man's conscience could unravel threads in the system, forcing reviews that rippled up the chain. Klein glanced at her watch, then stood. PT at 0800. I'll have the corpsman adjust your meds. But she lingered, as if sensing the weight. Jamal visits Fridays, if you're still here. Hale met her gaze, the offer hanging, a bridge from isolation to something human. He nodded once, crisp as a salute. As she left, the door's latch clicked, sealing him in with the drawing's quiet testament. Loyalty wasn't just to Rex or the team. It extended to the unseen. Kids drawing dreams from dust, nurses bridging the gap between ops and ordinary lives. Dawn filtered through the blinds in grey slats, the clinic stirring with the clatter of breakfast trays and muffled voices. Hale maneuvered to the PT room on crutches, the aluminum frames echoing his uneven gait down the hall. The space was sparse, rubber mats under fluorescent strips, parallel bars bolted to the floor, the faint tang of sweat from prior sessions. A physical therapist, Navy LT Ramirez, waited with a stopwatch and resistance bands, his demeanor all business. Range of motion first, Hale. No heroics. Build slow. Hale complied, gripping the bars, the cool metal steadying his push. Pain flared with each flex, but he breathed through it. Rex's imagined presence at his side, urging focus. Mid-session, Reyes arrived unannounced, duffel slung over his shoulder. Rex on a loose lead beside him, the dog strained forward, nose twitching at the unfamiliar scents, rubber, linens, the sharp bite of therapy gel. Cleared a visit, Reyes said, handing off the lead. Boy wouldn't settle in the kennel. Rex reached Hale in 3 bounds, circling once before pressing against his leg, warm weight a balm. Ramirez paused, eyeing the pair. K9s aren't standard here, but if it motivates... Hale knelt awkwardly, crutches aside, burying his hand in Rex's fur. The dog's tail thumped steadily, a rhythmic affirmation amid the room's clinical hush. Reyes leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Word from the grinder. Ellis called a team huddle. Your beach call's getting airtime. Handlers pushing for K9 veto on verifies. Torres is defensive, but maintenance owned the grate. Hale straightened, Rex healing perfectly at his side. The injury was a pivot, immobility forced reflection, turning personal defiance into institutional dialogue. Duty demanded obedience, but conscience, fueled by a whine, a drawing, a nurse's quiet nudge, challenged the rigid lines. It's bigger than one alert, Hale said, voice low as he resumed exercises. Rex mirroring his movements with watchful eyes. By midday, the PT rapped, sweat beading on Hale's brow despite the air-conditioned chill. Reyes led Rex out, the dog's paws clicking farewell on the tile. Alone again, Hale returned to the ward, the drawing waiting like an unanswered dispatch. Klein passed in the hall, nodding approval at his progress. Jamal's session tomorrow. Think on it. The offer tugged, exposure beyond the physical, sharing the bond that defined him. Hospitals weren't evasion's end, they were reckoning's start, where moral tension met human ties. Afternoon brought Harlan, his boots polished despite the day's dust, carrying a tablet with prelim inquiry notes. JAG's formalizing, protocol gaps in K9 integration, your inputs key, written statement by 1600. He sat, the chair groaning under his frame. This could shift things, Hale. Handlers getting more weight in training calls. The Master Chief's eyes held steady, a rare glint of respect. Hale nodded. The crutches a temporary crutch for deeper resolve. Defiance had cracked the door, now integrity would push it wide, rippling through ranks and routines. As evening fell, the clinic's vents whispered on, carrying the distant salt of the Pacific. Hale reviewed the drawing once more, Jamal's lines a symbol of legacy, actions echoing in pediatric wards, in team huddles, in the quiet evolution of trust. Rex's bond, once field-bound, now bridged to vulnerability's edge. The system's gears turned slower here, but Hale felt the shift. Conscience as catalyst, loyalty as the unyielding core. Tomorrow's PT loomed, but so did the child's visit, a test of opening what he'd long kept sealed. The morning sun slanted through the clinic's narrow windows, painting golden bars across the PT room's rubberized floor. Petty Officer Marcus Hale gripped the parallel bars, his weight shifting incrementally onto his bandaged ankle, the ace wrap compressing with each cautious flex. Sweat traced cool paths down his temple, the air thick with the scent of linoleum polish and the faint, underlying tang of eucalyptus from Ramirez's therapy oil. The physical therapist stood nearby, stopwatch in hand, his nod a silent approval as Hale extended further, ignoring the sharp twinge that radiated up his calf. "Hold it there. 5 more seconds," Ramirez said, voice clipped like a drill instructor's count. Hale complied, breath steady, Rex's phantom warmth at his side fueling the endurance. The session ended with a series of resistance band pulls, Hale seated on a stability ball, the vinyl creaking under him. His mind wandered to the kennels, where Rex would be running scent drills under Harlan's watch, paws churning sand, nose questing hidden targets. The dog's absence gnawed, a subtle void amid the clinic's enforced routine. Hospitals demanded surrender, not just of the body, but of the isolation Hale had cultivated. No field patches, no evading the white coats. Yet the drawing in his pocket, Jamal's crayon tribute, had lodged like a spent casing, reminding him that bonds extended beyond the team, into lives untouched by ops. Ramirez wrapped the session with a progress log, his pen scratching efficiently. "You're ahead of schedule, Hale. Crutches by end of week if you keep this up." Hale nodded, wiping his face with the hem of his PT shirt, the fabric damp and clinging. As he gathered his gear, the door swung open, admitting Lilton Sarah Klein with a tray of post-therapy vitals kit. She set it down, her gaze assessing his form without comment. "Jamal's group comes at 1100. Therapy drawing session, K9 theme, per the pediatric lead." Her tone was neutral, but the implication hung, an invitation to bridge the gap or retreat into the bed's confines. Hale paused, crutches under his arms, the aluminum cool against his palms. Exposure wasn't protocol, it was personal, a step beyond the chain's rigid lines. "I'll think on it, Ma'am." Klein's expression softened fractionally, the lines around her eyes deepening with a shared understanding of the operator's reticence. No pressure, but kids like Jamal, they see the heroes in the stories we tell. She left him with that, the door's hydraulic hush echoing his internal debate. Duty pulled toward the inquiry statement Harlan expected by noon. Morality tugged toward the ward, where a child's imagination mirrored the loyalty he shared with Rex. In the recovery room, Hale settled at the small desk, tablet open to the JAG template. The screen glowed starkly, cursor blinking amid fields for incident details. Date of alert, override rationale, injury correlation. He typed methodically, fingers tapping with the precision of a weapon clean. Facts first, no embellishment. The beach sweep, Rex's insistent paw, Torres's dismissal. The research great as a symptom of overlooked prep. Each entry built the case, not defiance for its own sake, but conscience safeguarding the mission's integrity. K-9 instincts, honed in real ops, deserved veto in training, a reform that could prevent real-world oversights, saving operators downrange. Harlan's words from yesterday replayed, "This could shift things." Hale paused, glancing at the drawing propped against the lamp. Jamal's Rex stood vigilant, crayon harness gleaming in imagined sunlight, a symbol of trust that transcended ranks. The institutional gears ground slow. JAG reviews could span weeks, pulling in command logs, handler testimonies. His cautionary note risked escalation, but silence would betray the bond that had pulled him from IED shadows in Raqqa. Loyalty demanded voice, even here, amid beeping monitors and the distant crash of Pacific waves audible through the vents. A soft chime from the hall announced the pediatric group's arrival, children's voices murmuring, the squeak of wheelchair wheels on tile. Hale rose, crutches clicking, and made his way to the door, peering through the small window. The ward bustled, a nurse guiding a cluster of kids to the activity room, crayons and paper scattered on low tables. Jamal was there, small frame perched on a stool, dark hair tousled, his face lighting as he selected a blue stub. Hale's hand rested on the knob, pulse steady but elevated, the vulnerability akin to stepping into an unsecured zone. He pushed through, the air shifting to one laced with fruit snacks and markers, innocent scents cutting the clinic's sterility. Klein spotted him immediately, nodding from across the room. "Petty Officer Hale's joining us," she announced to the group, her voice warm yet professional. The children looked up, eyes wide. Curiosity mingled with the ward's subdued energy. Jamal's gaze locked on Hale, recognition dawning. "You're the one with the dog," the boy said, voice tentative but bright, holding up his latest sketch. Another K-9 duo, this one mid-rescue. Pulling a figure from rubble, Hale approached slowly, crutches muffled on the carpeted floor, lowering himself to a chair beside the table. "That's Rex," he confirmed, pointing to the drawing's alert pose. The other kids gathered, questions bubbling. "Does he bite bad guys? Can he swim in the ocean?" Hale answered evenly, keeping responses mission-focused. Rex's training. The teamwork in searches, omitting the grit of deployments. Jamal leaned in, crayon paused mid-stroke. "My dad's like you. He says dogs know when you're scared." The words struck deep, echoing Hale's own unspoken fears. The whine in Rex's throat during alerts, the moral pull of overriding for truth. The session unfolded in quiet bursts, children drawing, Hale offering pointers on harness details, the room filling with the scratch of paper and shared glances. Klein facilitated from the side, her presence a steady anchor. For Hale, it was uncharted. No orders, no perimeter, just human connection raw and unfiltered. Jamal handed him a fresh sheet. "Draw Rex with you." Hale took the crayon, his grip awkward but deliberate, sketching the outline. Soldier and dog side by side, the lines emerging with a handler's precision. The act peeled back layers, revealing the legacy beneath the uniform. Actions rippling to pediatric wards, inspiring resilience in waiting families. By session's end, the kids dispersed. Jamal's drawing tucked into Hale's pocket beside the first, a growing testament. Klein approached as he stood. That took guts, more than any op. Hale met her eyes, chin level. Just sharing the team. But inside, the tension eased fractionally. Conscience had found voice, not in reports alone, but in crayon strokes. Back in recovery, he finished the JAG statement, the words flowing clearer now, advocating for K9 priority, citing the beach alert's proof, the injuries lesson in prep gaps. Afternoon brought Reyes, slipping in with a thermos of base coffee, black and steaming. Heard you went full ambassador with the kids, teams buzzing. Ellis mentioned it in the brief. He sat, boots scuffing the floor. Inquiries heating. Torres testified, downplayed the override, but handlers are backing you, could mean updated manuals by quarter's end. Hale sipped the coffee, its bitterness grounding. The public reckoning brewed, not in tribunals yet, but in whispers across the grinder, the slow reform of protocols. His avoidance of hospitals had cracked. Vulnerability, once enemy, now forged stronger ties. As evening descended, the clinic's halls quieted, Hale reviewing Jamal's new drawing under the lamp. Rex's form leaped from the page, alive in blue and brown, a mirror to the bond that tested duty's edges. The system's response loomed, reviews, testimonies, but integrity's cost felt shared now, rippling through children, teams, and the chain itself. Tomorrow's PT awaited, but so did the next layer, facing command with a handler's unyielding truth. The midday sun filtered through the clinic's reinforced windows, casting elongated shadows across the PT room's scuffed mats. Petty Officer Marcus Hale balanced on his healing ankle, the ace wrap taut against his skin as Lurton Ramirez guided him through a series of lateral steps. The rubber floor gripped his sneaker, each shift sending a controlled burn up his calf, the air heavy with the scent of heated vinyl and faint traces of liniment from earlier patients. Hale's breaths came measured, syncing with the therapist's count, one more set, steady, his focus a honed edge, much like sighting a target through fog. Rex's absence echoed in the quiet spaces between reps. The dog was back at the kennels, running perimeter drills under Harlan's command, paws churning the Coronado sand. Hale had caught a glimpse yesterday via Reyes's phone. Rex healing flawlessly, nose to the ground, oblivious to the institutional storm brewing around their bond. The JAG inquiry had escalated overnight. Emails from command pinged Hale's secure line at dawn, summoning him for a preliminary hearing in the SEAL headquarters conference suite. Not a full tribunal, but close. Statements reviewed, testimonies aligned, the chain of command's integrity on the line. Hale finished the set, sweat beading along his collar, and sank onto the stability bench. Ramirez logged the metrics, his tablet beeping softly. Progress solid. Full weight bearing by week's end, if no setbacks. Hale nodded, wiping his brow with the back of his hand, the motion pulling at the IV scar on his arm, a reminder of the medbay's reluctant embrace. Hospitals had always been his blind spot. A concession to weakness he sidestepped with field fixes and Rex's vigilant watch. Now, confined here, the walls amplified every ripple, the beach override, the research injury, the crayon drawings that humanized the abstract. As Ramirez exited, Klein appeared in the doorway, her scrubs crisp, carrying a folder under one arm. Hearing at 1400, Harlan sent word, "You're cleared to attend on crutches." Her eyes flicked to his ankle, assessing without judgment. Hale stood, testing the weight, the faint twinge a shadow of yesterday's fire. "Appreciate the heads up, ma'am." She stepped closer, lowering her voice amid the room's lingering echoes. "Jamal asked about you this morning, said Rex needs to visit the hero room next." A subtle smile touched her lips, the first crack in her professional veneer. Hale felt the pull, the boy's earnestness mirroring Rex's unfiltered loyalty, a thread weaving through the clinic's sterility. The walk to headquarters was a measured procession, crutches clicking on the asphalt path, the Pacific breeze carrying salt and the distant bark of training dogs. Base personnel nodded as he passed. Salutes crisp, but eyes lingering. Whispers of the handler who bucked for his K9. The conference suite loomed at the end of the admin block, its door flanked by potted ferns that did little to soften the institutional weight. Inside, the air was cool and conditioned, smelling of fresh brewed coffee and oiled leather from the high-backed chairs. Lieutenant Commander Ellis sat at the head of the polished table, flanked by a JAG officer in dress blues, Lieutenant CMDR Vargas, her notebook open, pen poised. Master Chief Harlan occupied the far end, his presence a steady anchor, while Torres stood rigidly by the window, arms crossed over his clipboard. "Petty Officer Hale," Ellis began, his voice level as Hale took a seat, crutches propped beside him. "This is informal. Fact-finding for the protocol review. Your statement's been reviewed." Vargas leaned forward, her tone precise. "Walk us through the override decision. Chain of command versus K9 instinct. Elaborate on the conflict." Hale met her gaze, spine straight despite the chair's support. He recounted it methodically. The surf zone rhythm, Rex's stiffen and pour, Torres's casual dismissal over comms. "Sir, protocol grants handlers discretion on alerts. Rex's certification is current. His history in ops outweighs a log entry. Delaying 2 minutes prevented a potential reset. Efficiency through accuracy." Torres shifted, his boots scraping the carpet. "With respect, ma'am, training tempo is paramount. Overrides without cause erode discipline." His words carried an edge, the support petty officer's frustration veiled in professionalism. Harlan interjected, voice gravelly. "'Cause was there? The simulant proved it. And the research great? Maintenance lapse, but the quick clear contributed." Ellis's fingers drummed once on the table, the sound sharp in the hush. "This isn't about blame, Torres. It's about integration. Hale's call exposed gaps. Now we address them." The discussion layered on, Vargas citing K9 manual sections, Ellis referencing deployment after action reports where handler instincts saved sectors. Hale spoke sparingly, facts anchoring his responses. The whine in Rex's throat, the pause insistence, the moral calculus of obedience versus lives potentially at stake. Vulnerabilities surfaced in fragments, admitting the injury's role in forcing this reflection, the clinic's stillness amplifying doubts long buried. Torres's defensiveness peaked when Vargas probed the Verify team's prep. "We followed SOP, sir. One dog's nose can't veto the op plan." But Hale countered evenly. "In the field it has. Fallujah, 19. Rex pulled us from an unset device. Instinct is the edge." The hearing wrapped at 15:30, Ellis's closing directive hanging like a stand-down order. "Recommendations to command by week's end. Hale, your input carries weight. Handler perspective could redefine Verify's." As the group dispersed, Harlan lingered, clapping Hale's shoulder with restrained force. "Stood tall, son. This ripples up. Could mean dedicated K9 slots in support rotations." Torres exited without a word, his clipboard clutched tight, the tension unresolved but shifting. Hale crouched back toward the clinic, the sun dipping low, painting the bay in amber hues. The system's response was procedural, reviews, memos, but beneath it, conscience stirred reform, one testimony at a time. Back in recovery, Klein waited with a fresh ice pack, the cold compress seeping through the wrap as he elevated his leg. "How'd it go?" she asked, settling into the chair, the folder from earlier now on her lap. Pediatric progress notes, Jamal's latest entry highlighted. Hale exhaled, the day's weight easing fractionally. "Progress. They're listening." She nodded, unfolding a new drawing. Jamal's depiction of the PT room visit, stick figure Hale on crutches, Rex at his side, crayons capturing the dog's alert eyes with surprising detail. He heard from the nurse on rounds. Wants you to sign it. For his dad. Hale took the paper, the colors vivid under the lamp's glow, tracing the lines where vulnerability met loyalty. The hearing had tested him publicly, words as weapons in the chains arena, but this, a child's mark of respect, touched deeper, echoing Rex's unwavering trust. Hospitals weren't defeat, they forged bridges, from ops to ordinary resilience. "Tell him I'll sign tomorrow," Hale said, voice steady. Klein's gaze held his, a shared nod acknowledging the quiet courage. Outside, the base wound down, helo rotors fading, waves whispering against the shore. The inquiry's legacy brewed, but Hale felt anchored, duty refined by morality, bonds enduring beyond the ranks. Evening brought a subdued visit from Reyes, slipping in with kennel updates. "Rex aced the drill, full points on simulants. Harlan says the chief's eyeing your research bump to lead handler briefs." He paused, eyeing the drawing. "Kid's stuff. Softens the edges." Hale folded it carefully, tucking it beside the first. "Keeps it real." The conversation drifted to team rotations, but the undercurrent was clear. Hale's defiance, amplified by injury and testimony, catalyzed change. Protocols evolving, K9 loyalty etched into the manual's core. As Reyes left, the clinic hushed, Hale staring at the ceiling. The moral tension resolving into resolve. Integrity's cost was exposure, but its yield was transformation, rippling through the institution like a well-placed alert. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Marcus Hale reach those who still believe in honor. The late afternoon light slanted through the clinic's recovery ward, casting elongated shadows across the tiled floor that Hale's crutches navigated with practiced rhythm. Petty Officer Marcus Hale made his way down the hall toward the pediatric activity room, the aluminum frames clicking softly against the linoleum. Each step a deliberate test of his mending ankle. The ace wrap held firm, the residual ache now a dull companion rather than a lance. But the true weight lay in the folder under his arm, his signed JAG addendum, fresh from the morning's revisions, advocating for formalized K9 handler vetoes in training verifies. Harlan had collected the original statement yesterday, but this supplement wove in the research injuries lessons, overlooked prep gaps that instinct alone could bridge. The air shifted as he approached the ward, carrying the mingled scents of crayons, apple juice, and the faint, clean sharpness of pediatric sanitizers, worlds apart from the salt and diesel of Coronado's beaches. Voices murmured within, children's laughter punctuating the subdued hum of monitors and rolling carts. Lieutenant Sarah Klein stood at the threshold, her scrub sleeves rolled to the elbows, gesturing him inside with a nod that blended professional courtesy and quiet encouragement. Jamal's been waiting. Group sessions winding down. Perfect timing. Hale entered, the room's warmth enveloping him like a briefing's close quarters focus. Low tables, ringed with colorful stools, hosted a handful of children, their drawings scattered like after-action sketches. Stick-figure soldiers, dogs in heroic poses, swirling skies of imagined ops. Jamal sat at the nearest, his small hands guiding a brown crayon over fresh paper, the stroke steady despite the tremor from his latest treatment. The boy's eyes lit upon Hale, brightening with recognition. "You came. For the signing." He held up the drawing from yesterday, the PT room scene, Hale and Rex rendered in earnest lines, the dog's fur textured with layered strokes. Hale lowered himself to a stool beside him, crutches propped against the table leg, the wood cool under his palm. "Brought my pen." He accepted the paper, along with a marker from Klein, who hovered nearby, her presence a subtle buffer. The other children glanced over, curiosity flickering before returning to their work. The room's energy a gentle current. Hale signed at the bottom, Marcus Hale, with a simple sketch of Rex's paw print beside it, the marker's ink bold against the crayon hues. For your dad. Tell him Rex says stay strong. Jamal traced the signature with his finger, a smile breaking through. Does Rex ever get hurt, like your leg? The question hung, innocent yet piercing, echoing Hale's own buried vulnerabilities, the field patches, the dodged med bays, the whine in Rex's throat during alerts that mirrored his unspoken doubts. Hale met the boy's gaze, voice level. He does sometimes. But we watch each other's backs. That's the team. Klein interjected softly, distributing juice boxes, but her eyes held Hale's a beat longer, acknowledging the bridge being built. The interaction stretched. Jamal sharing snippets of his father's letters, deployments in the sandbox, the quiet pride in K9 stories from news briefs. Hale listened, responses clipped but present, confirming Rex's swim training in the Pacific, the dog's preference for chew toys over kibble, no embellishments, just procedural truths that grounded the boy's imagination. As the session concluded, nurses herded the group toward rest areas, Jamal clutching his signed drawing like a commendation. "Come back when you can walk without sticks," he said, waving from the doorway. Hale nodded, the words settling like a post-mission debrief, legacy in miniature, rippling from ops to these confined horizons. Back in recovery, Klein walked with him part way, the hall's fluorescent strips buzzing overhead. That was good for him, and you. Hale adjusted his grip on the crutches, the motion fluid now. Opens doors I kept shut. She paused at the junction to admin. Jag's finalizing tomorrow. Harlan mentioned your addendums influencing the draft, K9 integration clause. The news landed steady, a confirmation of the reckoning's yield. Defiance on the beach, amplified by injury and testimony, now etching reform into protocols. No fanfare, just the system's slow turn toward equity. Handlers' instincts weighted equal to support logs, preventing the oversights that nearly cost Hale his step. Evening brought the hearing's closure in the SEAL headquarters briefing room, a space Hale reached via base shuttle. His ankle cleared for limited weight. The air was thick with the scent of dry erase markers and recirculated chill, the long table arrayed with folders and a projector humming idly. Lieutenant Commander Ellis presided, Vargas at his side, the JAG officer's notebook filled with cross-reference notes. Harlan and a cluster of handlers flanked one end. Torres absent, reassigned to logistics pending review. Reyes sat beside Hale, a silent show of team solidarity, his boot nudging Hale's under the table in subtle affirmation. Findings confirmed, Ellis stated, voice cutting the quiet like a radio check. Petty Officer Hale's actions exposed procedural vulnerabilities, effective immediately. K9 handlers hold veto on training alerts, with mandatory cross-verifies logged pre-drill. Maintenance protocols tightened, full audits post-setup. Vargas elaborated crisply, citing Hale's statement, the beach simulant, the research great, the instinct that bridged gaps in human oversight. This refines the chain without fracturing it. Loyalty to the mission demands trust in all assets, human and canine. Hale absorbed it, spine straight, the words of vindication wrapped in discipline. No medal, no erasure of the cautionary note, but a pivot. His conscience sparking quiet evolution, mentorship implicit in the updated manuals that would brief incoming operators. Harlan's nod across the table carried approval. The Master Chief's gravelly, "Well done," murmured as they filed out. The base twilight enveloped the walk back. Stars pricking the sky over the bay, the distant lap of waves, a rhythmic stand-down. Rex waited at the clinic's secure entrance, led by a tech, the dog's tail sweeping in arcs as Hale approached, warm muzzle nuzzling his hand. That night, in the dimmed ward, Hale reviewed the day's echoes. Jamal's drawing signed and sent, the protocol shift formalized, Rex's fur against his palm a tactile anchor. Hospitals had forced the confrontation, vulnerability under lights he'd evaded. but yielded transformation. Duty and morality converged, not in conflict, but alliance. The SEAL who once shunned medbay is now a symbol of integrated strength, his bond with Rex rippling through ranks, reforming the rigid lines into resilient ones. Dawn broke with full clearance. PT signed off. Crutches retired to the corner. Hale walked the path to the kennels unassisted, boots thudding on dew-kissed concrete, Rex heeling at his side, the dog's stride syncing perfectly. The team reformed on the grinder, Ellis's brief incorporating the new clauses, handlers like Hale leading the demo, instincts guiding the sweep, whispers faded, respect solidified in salutes held a fraction longer. The child's drawing, framed now in his locker, captured it, soldier and dog, unyielding amid the swirl. Integrity's legacy wasn't in headlines, but in the quiet evolution of trust, discipline tempered by conscience, loyalty the unbreakable core. In the end, one handler's stand proved that true strength lies not in blind orders, but in the moral courage to honor the bonds that define us. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of the SEAL avoided hospitals until a nurse showed him a drawing, a child made of his dog. See you in the next one.